Hello, everybody. Jack Olmsted, Port Townsend Pickleball, and today I am going to be chatting with Tarek Zaheer, and he is the founder of the Pickleball Mall. He started in 2011, and I saw him yesterday in Seattle playing pickleball at the SeaTac Sports Club. How are you doing tonight, Tarek?
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
So I'm very interested in your story. Can you take us back to the very beginning? And now here the dogs are barking, but hey, they'll calm down.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got the door shut too.
They're just excited to hear the story, I guess.
Yeah, actually, you can talk, and I'm going to turn off my mic so you don't have to hear them. How's that?
Okay, sure. Yeah, and as I go through this, Jack, you just raise your hand or stop me if what I'm saying is if you want me to elaborate or fill in more details. So, great. Yeah. So yeah, my name is Tarek Zaheer. I started the Pickleball Mall, which I'll talk about. But actually, I think the more interesting thing that I want to highlight is there was the Pickleball Mall, and there was also Mach Z Pickleball, which is kind of the evolution where I went retail to wholesale. And the key product that I'll come back to is called the Finesse ball. Maybe some people out there remember hearing about that or even playing with it. But I'll go sequential, step by step. Yeah, the Pickleball Mall started when I was actually 18 or 19, I think, and I was midway through university. I only started playing pickleball when I was 17, and being 17 years old, in high school, you're totally aware of YouTube and social media and all that stuff. But I found that there was not a really good way to buy pickleball equipment online. There were a couple of really solid retailers, Pickleball Central, which is still in business today, who were doing really good stuff back then. There was Fran Meyer's business, pickleballstuff.com, was doing good stuff. But other than that, buying pickleball equipment in that day and age had not caught up to the rest of the e-commerce world with interactive videos, with helpful guides of which paddle to buy or what should I use. It was kind of just really utilitarian interfaces for buying equipment. So, so at that age, I loved pickleball. I played it all the time, and I was in college, and I was learning about marketing and learning about e-commerce, and I was thinking, what an incredibly ripe opportunity it is to get into the pickleball business and bring the experience of buying pickleball equipment up to modernity, so to speak. So I started really small. Pickleball Mall was just a simple retail outlet that I started. It was just reselling equipment. So my biggest vendor who I purchased equipment from was Pickleball Incorporated, here in Seattle, headquartered in Ballard at the time, prior to being purchased by Pickleball Central a couple of years ago. And my main contact there was Doug Smith. Great guy, really just a good, honorable businessman who helped me quite a bit as his reseller. And he wanted to see, resellers, the whole dealer network be successful and offer enough products at good and just, spreading the word of pickleball and getting more people's hands. So at that time, I was buying most of my equipment from them. The champion paddles, the elite paddles, a lot of Dura Balls, nets, that was and that proved to be a good experience, but not really an easy one, because even the wholesalers in pickleball, and this also includes Mark Friedenberg, at the time owned ProLight Sports, and also Song, who owned S-Type Sports before that, Onyx Sports. You know, you weren't always able to get that line of visibility into the you know, into the inventory levels of my wholesalers. So, you know, those businesses I just mentioned, there were, you know, shipping issues, defects, and these are just natural things that happen in business. But it was not really in a mature market, a mature industry to easily, you know, resell a lot of product.
What year was this?
This would have been 2010, 2011. Yep, and I was I think 18 or 19 at the time, midway through college. Um, and yeah, so but building the website was a lot of fun, and I was really getting into SEO, which stands for search engine optimization. I'm sure you know that, in case anybody else out there doesn't. Search engine marketing, social marketing, social selling. So creating a Facebook page for the business, Twitter page for the business, really trying to do things that are industry standard today, but and we're pretty standard even back then, you know, almost you know, 7-8 years ago now, for pickleball. So so that was the plan, and it was a blast. And so Jack, you know, when you stumbled across some of those old pickleball mall videos, those were some of the pinnacle of what I was doing, because there were very, very few, if any, instructional videos on pickleball at that time. So yeah, there they are, and yep, the trademark Hawaiian shirt and the flip flops. That was pretty fun. And so anyway, yeah, you know, just and the videos, you know, serve kind of a dual purpose. I mean, not only did they bring, you know, visitors to the website, but they also I attempted to make them really kind of legitimize the sport. You know, they're just, at the time there were no good resources for not interactive, but just live videos that broke down the mechanics of a serve, right? The strategy that goes into a dink or a lob, or, you know, just any of your other fundamental shots of pickleball. Hoping that that whole process would also, you know, grow the community, you know, help some people who maybe were stuck and could get some tips on it. So yeah, that's just a little bit about, you know, that section of the business. Does that make sense so far, Jack? Do you have any questions or?
Yeah, I was very surprised to see how you broke down the serve. That's the serve that you are showing is a serve that I am suggesting beginners serve, instead of, you know, putting your paddle back and hitting the ball like you did. So good stuff. You knew what you're talking about.
Oh, good. Thanks for the feedback. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, these videos are now approaching 10 years. They're getting there. And you know, some of them I really haven't looked at them in quite some time, but I know that myself as a player, my game has changed quite a bit in you know, since those videos were made. And I always joke. Sometimes people come up to me and say, "Hey, I've seen your videos," and I say, "Oh, I hope I didn't ruin your game too bad," because I think some of them maybe I wouldn't quite do some of those same techniques, but I think for beginners getting into the sport, you know, the videos were on balance a good thing for you know, just for the sport in general, for the community, for the industry.
Well, here on this video on the serve, you have advanced videos coming soon, or advanced serving coming soon.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever make the advanced serving video?
I don't think so. If the annotation doesn't lead to anything, then probably not.
And then how about this logo, the PBM logo? It kind of looks like a telephone dial, the old school. But I guess that's a pickleball, right?
Yeah, that's a good observation. I never noticed that, but you're right. It does look like that old rotary style.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, you know, in my time prior to the business, I had taken website design classes and graphic design classes. And I never, they weren't very sophisticated, right? So I think I used like Adobe Fireworks, which is not really a good graphic design program. I don't even know if it's still around anymore, but kind of antiquated design tools to make these sorts of things. Correct. It was supposed to be a pickleball with PBM in the center. And
this is your tagline here: service, selection, and prices that won't put you in a pickle.
I feel like I stumbled into a DeLorean just now, Jack, and it went back with a flux capacitor. It's crazy to see this, but yeah, that's right. That was the motto back then. Mm-hmm.
So, did you have other connotations with pickle?
I don't think so.
In your marketing approach, did you think that would kind of break the ice with people?
Yeah. I don't think I was thinking in those terms at the time. And from a marketing perspective, I didn't stick because just let's see, how do I say this? I think my was to be really professional and friendly, and I didn't want to go too heavy on the whole pickle thing. There's even a little bit of controversy back then, even today, people thinking that it's not really good for the sport, or they want to change it to paddleball or something like that. But I thought just by having a strong voice, like in some of my tweets and some of my Facebook posts, that just almost made it sound like pickle wasn't a funny word. This is an exception. The tagline, that's kind of a punny double entendre thing.
Sure.
But back then I didn't want to really push the pickle thing. Just wanted it to be like professional, like saying, okay, pickleball's a real sport, and that happens to be the name. It's kind of funny, but we're not going to really focus on it.
So let's talk about Pickleball Mall. Let's talk about service. So, what was your focus on service?
It was everything, and so it's I'm sure you can relate to this. Anybody who's shopped online or actually just bought and relate to the notion of what a difference your shopping experience makes when the vendor or the retailer knows what you want and knows where you're coming from and knows your problems. And so I proudly displayed my 1-800 number, which was something that almost nobody else had at the pickleball retailers. And I was excited. I loved talking to people. And so I can't tell you like the genuine satisfaction I got when somebody would say, "Hey, I just started," or I'm ready to move up to the next thing. What paddle do you? And because I was a player at the time, and I loved the game, I loved tournaments. Really familiar with every single product that I sold. So I would say, okay, if you want that little extra oomph, I recommend this paddle because it's a little heavier. If you want a little more touch, this one's a little lighter, so on and so forth. So to answer your question, service was everything to the business.
And you talk to your potential customers on the phone over your 800 number?
Correct. Yeah. And I also had a contact us form on the website and did some email. But I always encouraged phone calls because, voice to voice is just that relationship building human aspect to build long-term customers and really leave people satisfied. So that was my preference.
Did you attend tournaments to display your products?
Yeah, I played tournaments, a little bit of formal sponsorship, but there was at that time, with the exception of nationals, and this is 2011, 2012, there really weren't big sponsors for tournaments. Nowadays you'll see vendors line up with booths, right, and their products lined across and with test paddles and stuff like that. There weren't really a lot of opportunities to do that back when I was doing business. Nationals was an exception. Maybe if I'd gone to the Huntsman, really big areas like that, I could have. But predominantly, I would compete. I would, introduce myself to people, cards, and there were a couple of others that I actually, would just box of balls to. Flyers, they would say sponsored by the Pickleball Mall, thanks for the balls, and things like that.
Okay, so service was everything for you. How about selection? How did you deal with the selection issue? Having a broad inventory.
Yeah. It was hard, because as a retailer, the more inventory and stock you carry, the more headaches that come with it, right? You got to make sure everything is in stock.
All right.
And you have to manage your relationships with your vendors. It's not just like one vendor. You have multiple. And then there are a little bit of politics too, actually, Jack. One of your vendors, I won't name any names, but somebody gets a little bit jealous, saying, "Why are you promoting, this competing business's paddle, not mine?" And kind of stuff like that. But I tried to make it work, and I think it was a decent homeostasis. So the I guess where it started was, I tried to keep my finger on the pulse of the business, of the community, what was happening. So Pro Light paddles, I can't speak for today, but back then were definitely the most popular paddles. The national
And
champion
who owned ProLight?
was Mark Friedenberg at the time.
Was the president of the USAPA at the time.
I don't know. I think he might have been president in years past. Business with him, but I know that
he founded the USAPA.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's my understanding. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So his company had the best paddles.
Yeah, I mean, and he had purchased it from Arlen, Steve Pronto's father, right? And Arlen, the first composite paddle. So yeah, Pro Light paddles, has a great history, with really solid paddles. I still play with the Pro Light today, and so knowing that, I made every effort to work with Mark and to try to stock a wide variety of his paddles. I think probably a close second, or maybe equal, was S-Type Sports, owned by Steve Wong, and he later changed it to Onyx Sports, which still has the name today. And so those were the two kind of main really popular types of paddles, and the other ones that Pickleball Incorporated sold, the Champion, the Elite, those were really kind of more perceived as entry-level paddles. They were still good, graphite, composite, aluminum. They would definitely get the job done, but you just didn't see a lot of the top players playing with those ones. But even so, they tended to be more affordable. There were higher margins on those products that I got from Pickleball Incorporated here in Ballard. And they also were pivotal to my inventory, to my selection, because they were manufacturing pretty much the only nets at the time, the Dura Ball, which was the most popular at the time, and some other accessories. So, yeah.
So that was your inventory: paddles, balls, nets.
Paddles, balls, nets, mostly, and some accessories, some grips. I think I sold. Yeah.
You didn't get into t-shirts, logos?
That was on the roadmap. Yeah, there were lots of plans for stuff like that, but no, did not get that far at the time.
So you started it in 2011, and when did you close your doors? And you said retail, so did you have an actual retail store, or was it an online retail?
Yeah, it was 100% online. It was 100% online. Yeah, that's right. I think I formally closed the doors in probably 2013 or so. But prior to that, though, Jack, there was a kind of a fork in my business, because back then,
what was there ever an uptick in your business where things were going really good, or was it always, you know, kind of a struggle, kind of running to make it happen?
yes, I mean, from a personal perspective, that time in my life was a little strange because I was pretty busy being a full-time student in university,
Oh,
right? And so I couldn't give, full 40, 80, 120 hours a week to my business, like, and that's just what it. I mean, I was really surprised to see that I think within the first day or two of launching my business with the help of Google AdWords, right, and various other advertising channels on the internet, I got a couple of orders. I think my first one, which was pretty interesting, pretty cool. Business I mean, it was kind of cyclical, right? Especially with the holiday season, things like that will give you some peaks and troughs, but by and large, it was pretty steady, and volumes were never huge enough to really make something off of. I think yeah, I think if more time had been spent, more marketing, more advertising, it would have taken off in a pretty cool way. But the other thing, and so this is where I was going to go with the fork, right? The margins were just really low, and I don't know what they are today, if they're higher or lower or whatever it is, but if I sold like a $65 paddle, my cost was, I think it was like $55, $55. So, you're making $10 or $15 if you're lucky on one single paddle. It's a long time, and people go through one maybe once a year, or never. They'll just play it till it goes down, and the market cap of pickleball just was not high at the time. I think it's really high now because it's just exploded in popularity. But the retail margins were not sustainable to really keep that flow of capital to keep on growing. So that leads me to the second phase,
the fork.
the fork, where I decided I took a long, hard look at the industry, at the community, at business opportunities, and found that wholesale was the way to go. There were huge opportunities to really grow in the wholesale sector. And I had ideas for making quieter paddles and for new types of balls, and so I started with this entity that I owned that ran parallel to the pickleball mall, called Mach Z Pickleball. And the first product that I ever made, I have a here called the Mach Z Finesse Ball. So I'll hold it up. Hopefully you can see it there.
Yep. I can see it. Mach
Mach
Z.
And then the back is rubbed off, but I have another ball that of the same color, different color, Finesse. That was the model of the ball.
Finesse. Okay. Are
That's
these
right.
indoor balls?
They are. So this is a good story. So, at the time, the only indoor balls there were, there was the Cosm ball, and those were, I liked those balls because they were rough, my personal opinion, but they were soft, they were slow. You could cut them, spin them, and you could block them. And with the Cosm ball, that was the original ball they played with out in Bainbridge Island. And it really, with the softer the ball becomes a game of touch as opposed to power. Unfortunately, what a lot of people were doing was playing with much harder balls indoors, and so you can slam it and you can really just overpower somebody, whereas the Cosm ball you couldn't do. So I really like the Cosm ball, and traditional classic players, a lot of them tended to agree with me on that. The problem was Cosm balls were number one, not very durable. A lot of them tend to break pretty quick, and the supplier, the supplier, the manufacturer of Cosm balls were not vested of the Cosm ball for the use of pickleball, right? So Fran Meyer at Pickleball Stuff told me a story one time. She complained to them saying that all their balls are breaking for pickleball, and they sent her a note saying, like in bold letters, saying these are designed for softball for preschoolers and kindergartners, so we don't guarantee them past anything that, right? So you can see where they're coming from. So that was the Cosm ball. Then there was the Jugs Ball, and the Jugs Ball has dramatically softened up over the years, and I really like playing with it today. But at the time, right, 2011, 2012, they were really hard, and I don't know what's been changed or what they did, but it did not play like the Cosm ball. It bounced really high. It was really skippy. It was hard to kind of finesse it just because it was a very lively ball. So that was that one. And then lastly, there was the Dura Ball. And the Dura Ball, there were two types. There was the indoor and the outdoor. And to be honest with you, I thought they played very, very similarly. They're both really hard plastic, rotationally molded. So they didn't have that seam in the center to take any of the and I knew hardly anybody that played with those balls indoors. And the few people that did, all they wanted to do was slam it because they were so hard. So anyway, that's just a little bit about the state of indoor pickleball. And I was really hungry to make a difference and come up with just simply a better ball that, but had the durability of the Jugs, because those balls were very durable at the time. And third, be a company that advocates for the players that use the ball, to create a ball for pickleball players by pickleball players, right? So it was a long journey to figure out how to get it manufactured. We looked in the US, it was astronomically expensive, completely cost prohibitive. So then we looked overseas, found possible options there, and then finally came up with what I had held up to you earlier. This ball, the Mach Z Finesse ball.
So is this made offshore in China?
Yes, it was.
So how did you find a ball manufacturer in China?
Just online. The specific
just online?
Yeah, the service was Alibaba.
How did you find it? You just started going through a Google search and
lots of Googling.
lots of Googling, and it popped up, and you went, did several of them pop up, and you just kind of contacted them, and this one was a company that you felt you could work with?
Yeah, trying to pin, and to be perfectly honest, I was regrettably inexperienced in locating a manufacturer. That whole process that goes into it. Sure. It's one thing to find U.S. retailers like Pro Light Sports, Pickleball Inc., S-Type
Sure.
Sport, but going overseas with a language barrier and not being particularly engineering focused myself was definitely a disadvantage.
And you're talking about an up and coming sport, right? Something that hasn't been proven, something that, do they really want to invest their plant in this idea?
Exactly. You're exactly right. If you go to a manufacturer overseas and say, hey, I want to start making some tennis balls, I plan to buy 1 million per year, that's easy, right? There's obviously, but pickleball's totally different.
Here's the money.
Right, exactly. So yeah, to answer your question, there were a variety of manufacturers that advertised that they of selling plastic balls, and that's the thing, right? You like the tennis ball example, you can't, maybe today you probably could, but back then you could not search into Google pickleball manufacturers in China. There were none.
That's right.
Yeah, so that keyword did not exist in those databases. So instead, you had to get creative and say, search for, plastic softball manufacturers in China or practice baseball. Those were the sorts of keywords that we had to use, and there were quite a few that came up. But based on conversations that I had with them, which were almost always on Skype, emails, kind of negotiating price. I continued to whittle it down, and found the one that I eventually used to make this. That's right in front of me today.
And so, how did that start? Did you give them an order for 50,000 balls to get the ball rolling? And how did you come up with the money to place that first initial order?
Yeah, these are really good questions. So, the first thing that was just penultimate to the success of this endeavor was making sure that the product was going to be right. It was what we were looking for, and it's what people would want to play with, right?
That's right. You could tell them what you wanted, but could they deliver the goods
exactly
to your specs?
Exactly. So,
and they could say, "Oh yeah, we can do it. Oh yeah, no, sure, no problem. Just send us the money. Oh yeah, no problem." Right? Is that kind of how it was working?
Pretty much. The good news is that they were able to. Luckily, it's pretty standard to request a prototype in advance and a sample to make sure that you got something physical to validate against.
Do you have to pay for it, the prototype?
Yes. It wasn't very expensive, though. I mean, to give you just a quick, idea, in the U.S., trying to find ball manufacturers, the cost of just the mold to create the balls was in excess of $40,000.
Yeah. This isn't.
Yeah. And in China, the same specs were about $700 for that same mold. So
wow.
So that whole was not it wasn't really too expensive to get the prototype made, sent over here, have us analyze, inspect, and test it out.
So how do you give them specs? You're not an engineering student. You don't have a background in engineering. How do you say, I want the ball kind of to play like the Jugs Ball and the Cosmin Ball, and because they don't play pickleball over in China, I'm sure they are hearing it for the first time. So, so how do you get them to take that idea and put it into a, say, $700 mold for a prototype?
Yeah. Really good questions. I guess the answer is in one word, just luckily, right?
Luckily.
We it.
It's like you take your money to the casino that happens to be in China, and you tell them what you want, and they go, "Okay, we got a new game for you. Okay, just place it right here."
That's right.
You're going to spin the wheel.
Yep, all on red. Yeah, because we're in China, so it's all on red.
That's right, it's all on red. Is that how you felt about it going in? Like, this is just one big gamble. This is just a spin of the wheel.
Yeah, well, it was. Yeah, it was. Can
you take us back to what you were thinking at the time? Not now, but at the time. Were you really excited about this prospect, and that you felt that they were just going to get it right the first time? That this was going to be it?
Well, yes, of course. So, I mean, the one that we settled on that made this ball here today was when we reached out to. And by the way, just say it was myself driving almost everything, and it was my dad also, who was kind of. So just for your edification, when I say we, that's what we means.
So you were playing pickleball with your dad yesterday?
Yeah.
At the gym.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yeah.
so he also got involved in playing pickleball and the pickleball business.
Yeah, that's correct. And
Okay.
not to go off too off track here, but I was living at home at the time when I was in college with my parents, and I commuted back and forth to school,
And
and
you're going to UW?
Western Washington University in Bellingham.
Western Washington. So you
Yeah,
were going after a 4-year degree there or 2-year?
4-year. Yep, that's right.
4-year in business administration?
Yeah, my degree was economics, political science, philosophy, kind of the unofficial pre-law major at the time.
Oh, so you were thinking that maybe you're going to be a lawyer?
Yeah, that was the plan. Plans change, of course, but
Sure. But that was your educational focus at the time.
correct, correct.
Okay.
And so living at home with my parents and my sister, my whole family, right? Yeah, so naturally my dad and I played pickleball together all the time, and he's a phenomenal player, great athlete, great sport, really fun to play with on the court. And he brought a lot of great energy into the business and ideas and things like that, and just some adult supervision, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So was really helpful too in kind of negotiating with vendors and selecting vendors and things like that. Um, but let's see, where was I? Oh yeah, so kind of again, so this vendor was not the first one we selected. Um, they were the final one, but the first one, we worked with a vendor out of Taiwan, one out of Thailand, um, a couple out of China. I think I probably had about 5 or 6 prototypes or samples sent to me from 5 or 6 different manufacturers. Um, and that process was not very, the investment was actually pretty low, because these manufacturers rather, they already had molds to manufacture plastic balls, right? And that's what we were trying to find, somebody that already had a mold, by searching for practice softball manufacturers, or practice baseball manufacturers, so that they'd have the equipment, and then if we could just give them, what we wanted, like this much softness, this much roundness, this size, do it. Um, so the process of getting the prototypes, getting the samples, was not very expensive, because they would just really charge us for the freight.
Mm.
The incremental cost to crank out a couple of balls was less than $1.
Mm.
It was expensive to get, like $50 to have them send it to us all the way from China. Um, but that particular thing wasn't too expensive. The money, having to give them the money, came when you place the orders for the large,
Right.
yeah. Uh, and it was a little scary. It was a little risky, because even for a college kid, I didn't want to have to lose $50 because some Chinese factory wanted to scam me, right? So it was definitely a little bit scary. But Alibaba, I haven't looked at the Alibaba in years. At that time, they had reviews, they had a ranking system, a gold member, things like that. So presumably you could trust what other customers were saying about them. And I only worked with vendors that had at least like a 4 or 5 star rating, that were had been used by other customers.
Now, talking about ratings, are these like eBay companies?
Very very similar, yeah.
Okay.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, so so moving on, the um, manufacturer was, this was all. The other ones that we got, they were either too hard, they were too soft, they were not round enough, they didn't have a true flight. And we would take them, the samples, and my dad and I would hit with them, and we'd take them to our local pickleball doubles place, and have, people were gracious enough to try out a new ball, and this is the feedback we got. And you know, it was this one, number 5 or 6 or whatever it was, that played really, really nicely. And it had that softness, it had that touch, but it still had a good pace. And we tried our hardest to break it and couldn't break it. So it just looking for. So at that point, when we found it was a go, then we moved on to, you know, working out an order. And at the same time, what was happening concurrently, Jack, was um, I tried to keep really good relationships and, you know, keep my ear to the ground with potential vendors and other potential customers and pickleball players, saying, hey, you know, this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I want to do. This, you know, I want to do it for the good of the sport. What do you think? Is this crazy? Is, you know, what's your feedback? And so I was also trying to see, okay, what would the prospective orders be for my buyers? And so that was also driving our decision to, you know, to establish what quantities we wanted and what colors, and you know, kind of the rhythm of inventory, so to speak. And so yeah, so that was that. I mean, once this passed our personal standards, and you know, we sent samples to a couple of places around the country that got really good feedback. We moved forward with an order, a batch order at the factory.
And what was your first order?
It was for a total of 2,500 white, 2,500 yellow. You can tell that's yellow or not. It's kind of bright.
No, it's pretty white.
Pretty white, yeah.
Yeah, I think you have a light on you. You have a light in front of you?
Of me.
Yeah, that's the issue. Everything's white. Everything. There you go. Now I see. Yeah.
So
Okay.
if I hold it really close, green and yellow.
Yep. See it. Yep.
Perfect.
Okay, now I see it. Yep. That's good.
And then 2,500 red.
25. So that's 7,500.
It should be 10,000, right? 25 times 4.
Oh, times 4. I see.
Yeah.
So you have a white ball.
Yes.
Okay. White ball. Okay, got it.
Yeah. So that was our first. That definitely was scary, unlike the prototypes, because instead of having to put 50 or $100 for shipping, 10,000 times the price of each ball, which was much more expensive, especially for a college student living at his parents' house. And the moral of the story was that first batch was not usable, actually. So
it's not usable.
It was not usable. So plot twist. The first batch was basically they did not match the prototypes, the samples. They were dramatically harder, and it would not. I mean, it was not the ball that we had originally ordered, that we asked for. And Jack, you know, in that time, the other thing that was really driving me was the industry was with just quality problems, things not getting fulfilled right. You know, you could, you know, in those days you might get a ball like a Dura Ball, and it was a total guess as to how it was going to play. Was it going to break in the first 5 hits? Was it going to go out a round? Was it even and I did not want to be that sort of company at all. I wanted to have good products that played right, you know, every time. So so yeah, that was a huge hit, and that was really demoralizing. Once you place the order, it takes like a month to get here, because they come on the ships all the way from China to Seattle, where they were delivered. So it was really too bad, because I had built up a lot of expectations. I had pre-orders ready to go that I was hoping to fill, like that got the stock in, and I couldn't fill those. So what happened was I got in touch with the factory, and I, you know, said what happened. You know, this isn't what we expected. And through some reasoning back and forth, you know, and I thought this was really nice of them. They credited to that initial production. They apologized and said that they would you know, they would send me they would redo the order basically back to what the original spec was, and just charge us for shipping.
How did they get out of spec?
Well, the answer to that is actually the primary reason for the total closing of my business in general, all my pickleball business, which simply is just the fact that quality assurance, quality check, right, QA, QC, in that part of means something very different than what it means here in the United States. And it's quite the endemic problem that I was starting to learn as I got more involved in this particular manufacturer. And other people that I talked to after the fact, you know, who's in the business said, oh yeah, you know, you got to be careful about the quality, that, you know, they're not going to do a bait and switch on you at the last second, which is exactly what happened. So yeah, you know, I mean, I can't explain the actual mechanics or, you know, what happened inside the factory as to why they gave us one type of ball and sent us something completely different. But all I can tell you is that it's very common. And to solve for that, larger companies, much larger than, you know, any capital that I had at the time, actually have a formal quality program with somebody on site at the factory checking the stock prior to it getting shipped out to make sure that, you know, it passes the check. So, but again, luckily, and this is why I had a lot of faith in this factory. They credited us the cost of the initial batch,
Right,
and created a second batch, and we just asked us to pay the shipping, which, you know, still wasn't great, but it was at least something. So, you know, lo and behold, we have to wait another month, right, for production, then to shipping. And, you know, you go to the bank and you do that wire transfer and you're crossing your fingers that it's going to work. And the second batch came, and that was drastically better. It still wasn't 100% match, but it was like 95%, and it was close enough. And we tested it out, and it played nicely, and people liked it. And so we were able to cycle that stock pretty fast, that second batch of 10,000.
so there you are. You got stock in, you're selling it through. That's what the wholesaler wants to do.
Yeah.
Pre-orders.
Exactly. And, you know, being able to sell large orders, right? So low volume but high value. And that was really good, because in the pickleball mall, you know, my time was eaten up by these onesies and twosies orders.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people would buy a paddle here, a dozen balls there, and the customers. I always talking to people, especially about pickleball, because we're like that. And, you know, when people were unhappy, you know, that's just basic customer service. You have to help them and fix their problem. And as I told you earlier, you know, it was for, you know, you could spend, you know, quite a bit of time on the phone, returning an order, returning the payment, all that stuff, for all of $10 on your profit margin for one single paddle. Right. So yeah, this wholesaling business with balls, which was a consumable item with rapid turnover, was a much better, you know, just a business model. You know? Yeah. And it was great, Jack. I mean, it was a good experience. They were good balls, and they, you know, I worked pretty closely with the USAPA. And you asked about the president. Actually, that was it just came to me. That was Bill Booth at that particular time.
Okay.
And there were some other people on board that were in charge of like equipment testing that I got in touch with, sent them samples, said, hey, let me know Because there are a lot of things in the rule book that you have to navigate through as well, making sure that it's within this certain diameter range, that the ball weighs between, I can't remember, like 27 grams or something like that. And because ultimately I wanted this ball to be the standard indoor ball, a
Sure.
ball that played, per the original intent of the sport, right? Which is a dink heavy game, which is placement, not power, and for it to be used in all the indoor tournaments, and just that was my vision. And we were there was a lot of momentum. We were making, we had a lot of steam behind us. There was a tournament down in Oregon, Pickle Barrel, the 13 Pickle Barrel. I can't remember the exact year, but they actually used our ball. So I sponsored it by sending them a box. And it was great. We got a lot of good feedback from it. It was USAPA approved, for sanctioned tournament play. We cycled all 10,000 balls out into the market. And it was good. But unfortunately, as a follow-up to your question about the QA QC problem, a quality control problem, as we were winding down to like 2,000 balls left, 1,000 balls left approximately, it was time to get a new batch of inventory in.
That's right.
And
which ball are you going to get?
Exactly. You
The
roll
one that's
the dice.
95%, or are you going to get yourself?
Yeah. Well, so
Spec?
so I can show you. Okay. This was the good batch, and I am squeezing as hard as I can right now, and it's good. It doesn't really soften up too much. It holds its shape, right?
Mm-hmm.
The third batch that we got, this is the ball from that, and if I squeeze even a little bit, it compresses pretty easily.
Whoa! Yeah. Not even in the same sphere.
That's right. So I'm squeezing both of these as hard as I can.
Not on the same page. Wow.
Yeah. So Jack, you can see that we put an order, our third order, for an additional 10,000 balls, and we got a whole bunch of these, these oops, not this one, these sponge balls, oops, and there was no way we could sell those. I mean, I did my best to try, to be creative and think, okay, well, maybe they can be practice balls, sell them for, half price, or, make it like a stamina trainer. Because the interesting thing is, in some ways, I actually kind of like playing with this, not all the time, but because this ball is so incredibly soft, it's like impossible to put away, right? So if somebody hits one up and you try to smash it, it doesn't really go anywhere. It just kind of dies. And so I thought it would be cool to be like, okay, maybe it's like a stamina trainer, because the rallies last so long with this ball. But and I talked to a couple people about it, but ultimately there wasn't really much that you could do with it. I mean, it's just so soft. The game gets so slow. And at that point, Jack, what happened was I pretty much phased out the pickleball mall, because I was done being a reseller. I was done with the onesies and twosies with the low margins, and I wanted the pride and control of having my own products in the market and trying to take the sport forward and be an outliers. Pickleball mall was pretty much phased out. And at this point, at this fork, right, yet another fork, right? It was either take the risk again and get another corrective batch, which they were not willing to come.
Which would be the fourth batch.
Which would have been the fourth batch, but only the second, right? So 50% success rate on 10,000 balls at a time. And by the way, the factory was not willing to comp the third batch. And their justification was that because they were softer than what we originally asked for, that you could use it for kids as a play toy. And they just didn't understand that these balls were for a very specific purpose. The hardness and the roundness and the shape was absolutely essential to the success of the product and to our relationship with the factory. And again, like I said earlier, quality control is just a very fuzzy concept over there. And when you're not careful, like we were not careful, these are the sorts of things that happen. So at that point,
well, how can you be careful? The only way you can be careful is you spend money with having somebody represent you at the manufacturing plant.
exactly.
I mean, that's how you're careful, and
Right.
careful means shelling out a lot of money.
Exactly.
Which means you were kind of undercapitalized to begin with, because you didn't have the Q&A in place so that you knew that you were going to get the product that you ordered.
Right. And that's why, as I said earlier, the lack of my experience in working with overseas manufacturers, or any manufacturer actually, was that was kind of the fateful, that was kind of the end. So what happened was, at that point I was getting really close to graduating from university, and the ways to move forward were either find a new manufacturer, or try to go after the original manufacturer, and it was such an arduous process, right? We really kind of realized that you have to go over there yourself, or send a delegate, or find an intermediate or somebody to be your protection.
Right.
And as you said, we were undercapitalized. I was still a college student, and from a personal level, I was get real world experience. I mean, I had done side jobs at the time, and I had worked a few things here and there, but I wanted to get into the real world, so to speak, and know what it's like to work for somebody, and and just get experience under my belt. Coming up with a fresh college degree, I thought, this business, took up tons of my time. It was making money, but not a ton of money, and
it probably wasn't making money that you could live on.
Wasn't, yeah.
So that you could afford an apartment, or a mortgage on a house, or car payment.
Right. Yeah, that's right. And if I had stuck with it and just dedicated myself to it, and maybe gotten a loan or something like that, I think I could have made it, could have gotten it back on the ground and up again, because there was so much momentum. And the most valuable part of my business, the relationships that I mean, by truly being vested in the sport, and vested in the players, and listening to your customers, you build that trust, right? Everybody wins in a situation like that. So there were a lot of people that were really sad that we weren't going to be making this ball anymore, and
well, you were sad.
We were sad.
You wanted to make the ball, but the problem was the manufacturer saw it as a ball, and it's like, balls are for kids. A plastic ball, it's for kids.
Right. That's exactly right.
It's for fun. It's a fun ball. That's what we're doing. Fun balls for kids.
Right.
Yeah, they're big kids, but they're having fun with the balls. They have fun with the balls.
Yeah.
They don't see it as a sport.
Exactly.
They see it as they don't understand, because nobody is playing pickleball over there.
Right. And they were not getting their doors beaten down with independent businesses like myself, of everybody asking for them, right? I'm sure they are now. I bet that there are lots of factors, and they probably pay more attention now too to the specs of the ball. But
I had somebody contact me. They want to sell me paddles and balls and a variety of things.
From China?
From China, yeah.
No kidding. Wow.
And they were having issues because one of the manufacturers changed from their production plant to another production plant in Taiwan. So they were kind of, trying to do private label for anybody.
Mm-hmm. Right.
$1,000, $5,000. That's what they're looking for.
Right.
And that's all they're looking for is money. We got product, and they posted videos on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't in the market. I wasn't in that sphere, but they wanted me to be there.
Yeah.
They kept pushing, low price. We'll send you, production models.
Right.
Some one-offs.
And if they had been around when we were looking, things might have been different today. But they weren't, right? The market just wasn't there.
Well, they even say, here are the manufacturers that we make paddles for, and we just put their logo on the paddles, and so they make the same paddle for a number of different companies.
Mm-hmm. Well, from a paddle perspective, the last thing I'll show you, which is kind of cool, is at Mach Z Pickleball, right, was the wholesale business entity that I had, that I wanted to make the balls, and I also had plans, so I wanted to start with the inner paddle. So I'm going to hold it up right here. This is a wooden paddle, relatively thin, and this was called the Mach Z CADET. Right, it's kind of like your entry level for schools, for kids, maybe for absolute beginners that just want to give it a shot. Can hold it up a little closer, maybe.
Yep, see it.
So
Z sweet spot.
Right, yeah, kind of as a training aid, right? Try to hit the ball right there in the sweet spot.
Right there in the sweet spot.
Yeah,
Z sweet spot.
Yeah. So this paddle was is actually pretty nice. The genesis behind this paddle was in the current state back then, the only paddles that you could get if you were a true beginner was they were called paddles.
What paddles?
Diller.
Oh, Diller, right.
Yeah, manufactured by Pickleball Incorporated. And they are the heaviest things that you've ever picked up. It's like trying to hit with an axe.
Right. And they give those to school kids, here, a little third grader, here.
Right.
We're going to teach you how to play pickleball.
Yeah. And they don't care just because those paddles are cheap. That's the thing. They're really cheap. So, and so, that was another problem that I wanted to say, okay, for beginners, for kids, for people that don't want to have to pay, $60-$70 for a composite paddle, should be able to have something with a nice handle, right? So this is kind of a contoured handle, not those thick logs on the old, that was, shapely, that was the shape you'd expect a paddle to be. Weight, but also balanced, and affordable at the same time, right? And so that was this paddle. I had prototypes made, and this is another one that we didn't do any production orders of this. If we got closer to getting to a production quality prototype, the balls were kind of falling apart on us with the other manufacturer, so we ended up not moving forward. But this would have been a really great one too for kids and beginner. There was a big market opportunity to have an entry level paddle like this that actually played, passable as opposed to the other ones. So anyway, but yeah, those are the only products that I really have to show you today to get off the ground. That was all part of that. So that's why when I was telling you earlier, the was really cool. It was a cool phase of the business to make those relationships and talk to people and go to tournaments and pass around my business cards. and sell quite a bit of product. The second phase was a lot more. Yeah, I had a lot more energy into that one because I wanted to make a real impact on the sport with good products manufactured again, for pickleballers by pickleballers, um, and yeah, just grow the sport. So unfortunately, ultimately, as we talked about earlier, it came down to quality control, production problems. But it was a great ride, and it was a really good experience for myself.
So that's the story.
That's the story.
And so you still play pickleball?
Yes, of course.
And your dad plays pickleball?
That's right. Yeah.
And I guess you're in your 20s now. I mean, you were 17, 18, 2011. So you're still a pretty young guy in the pickleball world. What do you think of the pickleball world today, coming from a business standpoint? How has it matured over the last 7 years, in your opinion?
Yeah. It's amazing. It's just it's really incredible. I would say on balance, um, it's grown in a really positive way. Nowadays you have lots of YouTube channels of people showing you pickleball stuff. You have lots of retailers online. You have much more in the industry, more sophistication of the businesses that are selling products, and a lot more players and really good competition. So there's just more money being poured into it. Um, I will say, it's a little bit regrettable that unfortunately, with growth and with more money getting pumped into something, you get more politics, and you get more big players that kind of start um, influencing the sport that isn't always in the sport's best interest, but it's in the business's best interest. And you hear about things like a tournament use whatever ball at whatever ball that the company is willing to pay the most to sponsor the tournament, even if those particular players in that tournament don't like that ball, right? So it's back then it was really player focused, and it's still player focused today, but there's that extra factor where big pickleball business manufacturers are coming and pouring money in to try to maximize their profits. So um, it's so it's anyway that's kind of a tough balancing point, but overall, I mean, it's great. The sport's huge. You can get them at stores. I think Big Five was selling pickleball equipment starting a number of years ago, which is pretty cool. So it's been fun to watch for sure.
Yeah, I was on the other end of that scenario where a pickleball ball manufacturer donated balls to a tournament down in Santa Rosa, California.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody was getting ready for the tournament. And so they all had these balls. Well, the balls had a seam to it. And sometimes the ball would hit the seam. And sometimes the ball would hit high. And sometimes the ball would hit really low.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, it wasn't consistent. It was like kind of the roulette wheel. You got double, double, zero. Sometimes it hits it. Most of the time it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I talked to the tournament director about it, and he said, well, we don't want to spend money that we don't have to spend, and we got these balls given us for free.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the balls we're going to use. So they basically stuffed these inferior balls down the players' throats.
Right.
And said, this is what we're going to play with. And I see that happening a lot.
Right.
I see that the people are focused on the money, and they're pushing inferior products onto players. And if you have a problem with it, they'll kick you to the curb because there are so many players that just want to go along with the program. They want to play in the tournament. They want to have fun. They don't really want to get into the politics.
Right.
They just want to play. I just want to play. And I hear that from time to time when there's a little commotion on the court, and the person that started the commotion goes, let's just play pickleball. Let's just play pickleball. Let's just play pickleball. That's all I wanted to do. But it's kind of weird, because when you go out and play tennis, you know that the tennis ball is going to bounce the same way all the time.
Exactly.
Not going to be off center, so that you got that luck factor built into it.
Right. And Jack, what you're describing, right, is textbook case of what I was trying to address.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, a product made by pickleball players for pickleball players, something that you can trust, something that is reliable.
Right.
And I guess we're kind of at that stage. I mean, I like the Pure 2 balls that Onyx came out with a year ago. They bounced true, but then there were some issues. They pulled them off the market after a year.
Right.
And then they've come up with something else, and who knows if that will get pulled off in a couple of months.
Right. Yeah.
It's funny for whatever reason. I mean, what is the reason? They don't tell you what the real reason is. They just kind of give you this blanket. They're not up to spec. It's like, well, what are the specs? Well, you don't want to know. we won't tell you. You have to, be a player in order for us to tell you what the specs are. And then they have third-party companies that are going to check the specs. Well, they check the specs against a spec book that somebody gave them. I mean, and that's all secret. It's like crazy.
Right. Yeah, that's why when I hear about production problems and things like that with the Pure 2, I just smile and say thank you that I'm not in that position, because I know what a headache it is. So
that's right. So what advice would you give a group of people that want to enter this pickleball market?
Oh yeah. That's a fabulous question.
I mean, you go in with a ton of money, expecting to lose a little bit in order to gain a little bit. Is it a real gamble now?
I don't really. I mean, any gamble, because there are factors beyond that can determine the fate of your business. But I would say that the decision to enter some sort of business in the pickleball industry, manufacturing, reselling, instruction, services, whatever it may be, is a pretty solid bet, because the sport is growing so much. It's each day you have pickleball, you have new players. It's not each day you actively have players getting bored of it and deciding to stop playing, right? So I'm very optimistic about the future of pickleball. I think that there's still a lot more growth. I think that we're going to see a lot more products and training camps and just money from all sorts of institutions getting poured in a lot of ways, Jack. I mean, I wish that I had, in some ways, because nothing else, a lot of early enters in the market, such as myself, who did stick with it, sold their businesses for pretty nice sums of money. But even so, it's the ones that started at the beginning, really big players. Like today, I think Pickleball Central, one of the premier players in the market, and really good people. I know the owners pretty well. They're really good people, and they run a great business for the sport. Those ones today are continuing to success in the market. But to answer your question, say that if you want to enter the business of pickleball today, the most important thing is to have a differentiator. I see all sorts of paddles being offered, and it used to be intriguing. It used to, I used to think, oh, what kind of material is this made out of? What's the balance? What's the shape? What's the grip? What's the core? But after a while, the difference in playability paddles or other accessories is pretty marginal, and that's why I didn't talk too much about this when I wanted to get into the paddle manufacturing businesses. Entry level one just for beginners, but was to create a paddle that was quiet, because that was a huge issue back in the day, and I'm sure it's still an issue today too. For these outdoor communities of these outdoor players, hitting that hard Dura Ball over the place makes that loud puck 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 sound, and it's a big disturbance. So if someone wants to put in the money and in research and development to get a quiet paddle, I think that would be great. But if you want to just make a paddle just for the sake of it, just so you can say, hey, I made my own pickleball paddle, and it's the same composite core or graphite core or same shape or whatever, be hard pressed to find buyers unless you really give them a reason to think that your paddle's better.
There's a lot of competition out there.
Mm-hmm.
For getting people to focus in on a particular paddle, and it seems like it's gone the way of tennis, where they want top players to endorse those players or those paddles. They write their names on them, and so that you associate a good player with the playability of the paddle.
Exactly. So yeah, it's not only having a differentiated product, but it's having one that's sponsored and or endorsed by the players in the community.
Yeah. By somebody that is excelling in the sport.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's some dynamics that are shaping the pickleball market. That's not just based on quality.
Right. That's a good point. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, any closing comments? I think this has been a great chat.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. I've never done a formal interview thing like this before, especially not in pickleball. So it's great to go down memory lane and think about all the things that I did.
So if you were to go back, is there anything that you would have done different that would have kept your doors open, that you would have stayed on track?
Oh, of course. Yeah. And this kind of bridges your question about advice for other people that want to get into the business. The one thing that's pretty easy, right, is just the quality check. If you want to go in, be prepared to embrace the business, right? And wherever you get your products manufactured, domestic or overseas, to have somebody who is fighting for you on your behalf, right? That's going to serve as a middleman to ensure that you're going to get what you want. That's of course what I would have done differently. And if anybody is watching this out there who purchased from the Pickleball Mall or played with a Finesse ball, Mach Z Finesse ball, I'd like to personally thank you and hope you had a good customer experience. And thanks to you, Jack, for putting this together. Fun.
Well, thank you, Tarek. Stay on. I'd like to talk to you offline. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you next time, guys.